Martin Krause is from Argentina. He is an economist and a political scientist with a long experience. Apart from being a professor in Argentina, he has taught and had been visiting professorships in different places, including Spain, and he is an adjunct scholar in the Cato Institute, member of the Montpellier Society, and last but not least, he is an advisor to President Milei, the new liberal president in Argentina. And of course, I think we are all eager to hear if you think about Argentina, which has been, I would say, one of the richest and most developed countries in the world at the beginning, not of this, but of the last century, and which actually during the last decades has always served as an example of mismanagement and well, I would say not the rise, but the downfall of nations. Has this something to do with the educational system? Or how comes that things went that wrong in Argentina? And can we expect that President Milei finally manages to change the course and sustainably give liberals hope? Martin Krause, we are very much looking forward to your talk. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, many thanks, Kurt, for the invitation. I'm so honored and grateful. Thank you, the Prince of Liechtenstein here for the invitation as well. And I'll be talking, you may wonder, with this name, Martin Krause, and you don't speak German. Well, it has something to do with what I'm going to tell you. My grandparents from my father's side came from Pommern. But my grandparents from my mother's side came from the Basque country. And I went to a Spanish-speaking school. And unfortunately, and I'm ashamed of that, the German was lost, sorry. So, but you will see that is kind of a general story in Argentina. I was very interested and curious about your debate in the panel before, because you were discussing things like the very existence of government, and that were the kind of things that we were discussing, let's say, 2 years ago, in debates like this. But then imagine what happened. We were discussing, whether there should be a government or not, and then imagine Professor Esfeld becoming the president of Germany. And you say, what? What happened here? Well, let me tell you, that's not going to happen. Professor Esfeld is not crazy enough to make it there. So, but that's mostly what happened with us. And so Argentina is back in the news. Fortunately, this time, it used to be because of bad news, with a high inflation, an economic disaster, default on the debt, things like that. This time, at least for some of us, there is some hope. So people even is still in supporting the new government in the polls, not because things are getting better. Actually, things got worse during the first month of the government. But at least they got worse with hope. Before that, they were getting worse without any hope for changes. So they are still willing to go through the necessary efforts that need to be done. So let me tell you very briefly what's going on. Argentina is going through some important changes, and those changes have sparked all sorts of reactionary forces. There are any sector who feels like some of their privilege is being touched will come up with a protest and against what's going on. Let me give you an example. For example, the unions. The unions didn't stage a general strike, not any one general strike, in the last 4 years of the last Peronist government. In the first 4 months of this government, they have already staged 2 general strikes. So what changed so much? Well, is that they are trying to protect the privileges. Privileges like what? Let me tell you, for example, with the unions. The unions, Argentina during the first Peronist government back in the 1940s, copied the Mussolini's Carta di Lavoro and built a union system where only one union can be in each industry. That union also manages the health plans of all workers in that industry. That is a huge amount of money. And not only that, the union also collects the union fee regardless of whether the worker is a member of the union or not. And they don't even have to go through the effort of collecting it because the employer has to deduct the union fee and give it to the union. So union leaders are millionaires, you know, and they are fighting against these privileges, the abolishing of these privileges with tooth and nails. That's what we, and as the union, many other sectors as well. But that has nothing to do with education yet, or at least it has to do with the teachers' union, say. But let's go to education, and let me go back to the history of Argentina. As it was mentioned, Argentina enjoy a time of prosperity, an incredible prosperity, starting in the second half of the 19th century. That led this poor country to become one of the richest countries by, let's say, the start of the First World War or the 1930s crisis. That was led by a small number of enlightened classical liberals. And they wanted to build a modern nation. And at that time, because of the country's success, there was an incredible inflow of immigrants, well, including my grandparents. And they came down to Argentina, let me tell you, to the point that by 1910, more than half of the population of Buenos Aires wouldn't speak Spanish. So they thought that they needed to build a nation, because this was not a nation. This was just a country so young. It has no traditions. It has no history, basically. So they thought they should build a nation, and therefore they should build a culture. And to do that, they enforced an educational system that was based on having a mandatory primary education for everybody, and they built a lot of public schools. All teachers had to graduate from the national government secondary schools, and the government enforced by law certain specific contents that should be taught in every school. Let me tell you, this policy, which I call constructivist liberalism, it worked. And if by 1870, 78% of the population was illiterate, 1 century later, 1970, only 7% were. So that, I would call, okay, that was a success. But what they didn't realize is that they created an instrument that, as long as it was in the hands of these enlightened liberals, was fine. But the same system could be used in any other direction. And let me tell you, one of the lessons that I get from this is that any system of mandatory education sooner or later becomes an indoctrination system. And that is what happened. We had this populism taking over, and the system changed dramatically. And you have learned now that in Europe there is left-wing populism and there is right-wing populism. Well, we had both. And not only that, which is peculiar, is that we had both in the same party. Because the Peronists can be both left-wing populists or right-wing populists. They don't care, as long as they are in power and they can make money, let's say. So the system turned out to be was taken over lately by woke populism, let's say. And a system where the contents, and I'm going to go somewhat in more detail about this, what they teach students is that society is conflict. No, not society is cooperation. It's conflict, that rights are collective rights, not individual rights, and that collective rights you got them in the streets, protesting and fighting in the streets. That's the way to go. So the whole educational system was focused into teaching children from very young ages that they should fight for their collective rights, protesting in the streets. That's the way to go. Well, one more aspect of Argentina's federal system, and has to do with the reforms as well, is that Argentina is a federal country. Here in Switzerland, you know that clearly well. The provincial governments manage the schools. They own the public schools in the primary and secondary level, and they are the ones supervising the contents of the education. The contents of education are defined in a federal council of all the ministers of education of the provinces and the Ministry of Education of the nation. And once they set up those minimum contents, they need to be applied everywhere. Now, why that? They still keep on going. They still keep on saying that we need to build a common culture. And they don't realize that the market or the spontaneous order is already doing that. I mean, as I mentioned, at the beginning of the 20th century, a lot of people wouldn't even speak Spanish. But let me tell you, one generation and two, the melting pot actually did work. And now you can see, if you go down there, there is a strong local culture that has nothing to do with the education programs. For example, things like they're very peculiar to us and very important, like, I don't know, we like football, fast, we have tango, and things like that. No one ever thought that it would be part of the educational system. Let me tell you something. I'm so glad that any government thought that football have something to do with government, because otherwise we wouldn't have won anything in football. But we did, because football clubs have nothing to do with government policies so far. So, and let me tell you how this happened. All the immigrants were coming down. They were building their specific friendly societies, and they merged with each other. You still can go to Buenos Aires and you will find the British hospital, the German hospital, the Italian hospital, the Spanish hospital. They now cater to a wider audience. But they were created by each of these groups that got together every time they came into the country. The same you can see, for example, in sports clubs. Let me take just one sport, rowing. So down there you have the Buenos Aires Rowing Club, created by the British. You have the Canottieri Italiani. You have the Teutonia. You have the Hispanic club. And even in football, you have Old Boys, that very name, Old Boys in English. And the two main teams down there have English names. One is Boca Juniors, and Boca is a neighborhood in Buenos Aires. The other is, the best, of course, River Plate. No, that's mine. Sorry. That's why the best. Okay. So that means that the spontaneous order was able to build without any government mandates or policies or contents a specific culture. Because, sometimes it is thought that the market wouldn't give some common contents. So that's why it's good to have mandatory contents imposed by government. But, markets cater to whatever are the needs and preferences of customers. And certainly, what we have seen is that they evolve and try to offer people what people demand. And people will demand many things that are common for all of us. We want all our children to learn math and language and, other basic issues. Now, let me tell you something about the mandatory contents that we have. As I said, they stress the issue of collective rights, of struggle in the streets. They believe that they say that the main problem in society is the social differences, and that those are the main barriers for progress. Social differences are differences in income, in gender, in culture, and there is no mention at all in this mandatory contents about the problems of regulations. For example, about the problems of regulations of labor, which are so heavy that we have more than 40% of workers working in the informal sector. And that makes it very, very difficult for young people to get into the formal job market. So they start doing informal jobs. There is no mention about that. Other things, and there is no mention about taxes. There is a think tank down there that has made a report saying Argentina has something like 180 different taxes, which is absolutely crazy. You don't even know how much taxes you're paying, because they come all through the prices of the different products, overconsumption. And the mandatory contents also make a lot of stress on taking consideration of some of the tragedies of modern history in this world. But even in that, they are biased, because they specifically say that all students should learn about the evils of apartheid, of the Holocaust, or Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but there is no mention of the deaf people in the Cultural Revolution with Mao. There is no mention of what happened in Cuba or what's going on in North Korea. No mention about that. So the bad guys are only on one side. On their side, nothing. So that is the contents of the mandatory system. In a way, we are lucky because governments, at least ours, tend to be quite inefficient. So the controls are not exactly enforced as probably would be here, let's say. So, in a way, teachers have some leeway to teach whatever they think is best. Because the control is, there is, let's say, an inspector from the Ministry of Education that comes to a school and wants to certify that they are teaching, that now is the time to teach, let's say, income differences. So how do they check on that? Well, they go to the secretary of the school. The school has a book where a notebook, a big notebook, where the teacher has to write what is going to be the subject for the day. And let's say that he says income differences. So the inspector goes, sees the book has been signed, okay, and he leaves. But that, at the room school, anything else can happen, and no one is eventually looking at that. So, in fact, that gives some leeway, freedom to the teacher, but that doesn't mean that kind of regulations are good, of course. Just means that they are so badly enforced that, well, at some cases, we are lucky enough that we don't get the whole indoctrination thing. Now, of course, and I agree with what has been mentioned here, giving the parents the freedom to choose would certainly empower them. And I'm going to move now to more conceptual issue here. I think there are three, I'll do that after this. The present government has defined the reforms that it will be following as 3 generations of reforms. The first generation of reform is the one that we're going through now, which is the fiscal adjustment and killing inflation. That's the first. No fiscal deficit, no monetary expansion, okay? And inflation should fall. How long it's going to take? I don't know. It's now falling every month after the next, but we're still having very high inflation. We're still having in a month more than you have in a year. But the trend is going now, and they are being strict in keeping no fiscal deficit. I mean, no operational fiscal deficit and no financial fiscal deficit. That means including the payment of debt. Now, the second generation of reforms will be the reform of the government structure, privatization of government companies, that takes longer, deregulation of the economy. The third includes education, health, and social programs. That doesn't mean that education and health and social programs are in the third generation. That doesn't mean that they are not doing anything right now. Let me give you again an example on the social programs. You may think, I don't know, you may think this is crazy, but let me tell you how it works. The government gives a lot of social programs for people in need, really. but they give the programs not directly, but through, let's say, specific organizations or associations that were created by, basically by anyone. So it's not the government giving the money of the social programs directly to the people, but the money goes to an organization, which might be a cooperative or just an association that could be a political affiliation or not. They get the money, and then they give the plan to the people in need. What that has created is that these organizations have become incredibly powerful because they are the ones that, in the end, give the money away. So they ask all the people, do you want a plan? You have to come with us to protest in the streets because we want to ask more money. And that's what they do. So we have every day, or we had every day staging rallies in downtown Buenos Aires of all these organizations asking for more money, and people just go in there because they knew that if they didn't go, they wouldn't get paid. What is amazing in this case is that they just had the protest was kind of a job. Yeah? So what's your job? What do you do? I just protest on the streets. That's my job. I go every day. They were even reporters going and asking the people, why did you come here? And they would say, I don't know. But I just came here because they are telling me that if I come here, I get the plan. Crazy. Well, what this new government is doing is saying, forget about intermediaries. Now, the social plans will keep on going because they need them, because the situation is really bad. But they are going to go directly from the government to the individual, to the people. So that's one other thing. In the case of education, as I said, the schools are in the hands of provincial governments, and universities are autonomous. So it's not that the national government can intervene directly in them because they have an autonomous status. So what has happened so far is that education has been declared an essential service, which is just to avoid this thing of every time the classes were about to start, the union would have a strike demanding this or that or the other thing. So now it's an essential service, like working on a hospital or like working on air traffic controllers. You have limited ability to stop the whole service, and you need to keep, I think it's at least 80% of the teachers at school to receive the students. Because, every strike, it's very a problem for parents who need to go to work and leave their children at school and then go to work. But if the school is at strike, they cannot go to work. It becomes really a mess. So that was one thing. The other thing is moving into the steps before going to a more open choice in education. And those will be, teachers will be evaluated now. You would probably ask, what? Weren't they evaluated before? Yes, every now and then there was an evaluation of teachers, but let me tell you something. You know what the union got? Okay, you can evaluate the teachers, but the results will not be open. Come on, it's not real. Yeah, because if they are open, there might be discrimination. What? So the results of the evaluation would be known only by the ministry to design policies, but not by parents. And maybe could be, if they ask for them, for the director of the school. But a school would not know how the performance is against other similar schools to compare. No, that was not possible. So one of the changes is that there will be now an evaluation of teachers that will be open as a first step to improve choice later when this comes up. The same with student tests. Now there will be student tests at the end of the secondary school, and the results will be distributed openly. There is a change also in the regulation of distance learning. So far, distance learning was only allowed for adults, that is for people over 18 years old, and now that has been removed. So that basically will open up the door for homeschooling. And I would say, because one needs to find ways to get to your goals or more freedom in education, that this could be also a way to open up the market of education also. Because distance learning, what is distance learning? Okay, maybe distance is from here to there. That's a distance as well. So in a way, you would be able to open up the market and allow people to teach their children in any way if they qualify. It's not going to be that easy, but to qualify as distance learning. And in the universities, and I mentioned that they are autonomous. What does it mean to be autonomous? It means that they were granted a budget, and they would do with the budget as they thought fit. And this government now is saying, we want an audit of this money. And then it has become a scandal. No, this is an attack on the independence of the universities, and they are staging again a general strike, etc., etc. But the government say, listen, this is taxpayers' money. We just want to know how you spend it. Not that we're going to interfere in what you teach or what you do. We don't care about that. But we just want to be where the money is spent. And so far, we have nothing. We have no control about that. And finally, there is this issue of vouchers. As I said, since primary and secondary education are in the hands of provincial governments, a real voucher program would only be able to be introduced by a provincial government. And as long as there is not one that may want to try, we will have to wait and see. What the national government has done is to implement a kind of voucher program for private schools, which is a certain amount of money that parents get if they want to send their children to a private school, and this will help them pay that school. Particularly, this may help. We have several what we call parochial schools run by the Catholic Church, and they charge a low fee, and they get a substantial subsidy from the government. But now this government is giving the money to, not all the money, but part of the money to the parents, so they can either move their children from public school to one of these parochial schools, or for those who are already going there to be able to pay without problem. But so far as we're going in the issue of budget, of vouchers. Now, I want to end up, how long do I have? 5? Okay, great. I want to end up with two conceptual issues. One is the importance that has been mentioned here already about education and ideas. I mean, education is not only what happens in schools and universities. Education happens every time, everywhere, and it has to do with the molding of public opinion, which is extremely important for the direction a country is leading to. Milei is engaged in two battles. One battle is the political battle to get the reforms through this, so hard political system. But the other battle is what he calls the cultural battle. We need to win the cultural battle here. And that's why he's so committed to that he goes everywhere and tries to push for the liberty ideas. To tell the truth, I don't like the word the battle of ideas. I don't think it's a good metaphor. Because battle means there is one here, there is one there, and they say fight each other. One wins, the other loses. I don't like that military metaphor. I rather use the metaphor of a marketplace of ideas. There is a marketplace of ideas where we have a supply by entrepreneurs of ideas. Many of you here are entrepreneurs of ideas. And we have a demand of ideas on the other side. And this competition is building a common ground, let's say, a public opinion. So it seems to me that we, or this new government in Argentina, is very much engaged in the political reforms on the one hand, and in the market of ideas, which is so important, and particularly because they need it. You may know already that the government doesn't have a majority in Congress. So he doesn't control Congress, he doesn't control the judicial power. So it's very difficult to make some reforms go through, because they are rejected. And that's what we have seen in the last 4 or 5 months. Every bill that goes to Congress starts to be scrapped until basically they leave nothing. So the government goes back again, and all again, the opposition politicians or the interest groups go against those reforms. And the last point, which is a theoretical point, I would say, which is the kind of things I like, is what interesting debate about whether education is a public good. I mean, a public good in the sense of you might know this, in the sense of an economic definition of a public good. Public goods are called those who have, let's say, no exclusion and no rivalry in consumption. So those are supposedly goods that the market, or that's at some point mainstream theory would say, some goods that the market would fail to provide, at least in a certain amount or limit. So I think it's a very interesting discussion. Really, education, a public good. And is there a market failure that the market cannot provide education? Well, I think that's, we can see. It was mentioned by Michael before. You will hear Pauline here talking about a private education for the poor in the poorest places in the world. So how come that you say that the market cannot provide education, and therefore the government has to do that? I see private education going on anywhere, not only in poor countries, also particularly in our country. For example, all the field of technological education is going through private providers, because the government universities have been slow in moving into these new areas, and the market goes very, fast. So I think that it's of course, does education have positive externalities to others? Sure, of course. But how many other things have positive externalities for others that the market supplies? You know, we can find a lot of examples to that. I don't want to be very low quality example, but let's say women here make a lot of efforts to be beautiful, and we receive that as for free. You know, it's a positive externality. Should the government do something about that? No, of course, please. It's working fine and very well. And we have positive externalities voluntarily provided. And the same happens in education and in many other fields. So again, I think, or to end on this, or go back to the beginning, I'm glad that we are in the news again from bringing us or opening up the door of some hope. And my hope is that I really hope that it may turn out to be successful in the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very informative and insightful talk about a country of hope. If I understand you correctly, then obviously the decay of Argentina was very much due to state capture of everything in a very inefficient system, and also of state capture or political capture of the educational system. So would you say that actually the low quality then of the educational system was the result of the problems, or are the problems the result of a bad educational system?
No, I think it was the result. And the educational system, probably I didn't mention that, was taken over by politicians and by the unions. You know, the unions have a concentrated interest. They are organized and they are good at pushing for whatever the privileges are. I mean, I'm talking about the union leaders mainly, no? Not the members exactly. But they got a lot of power on that. So while parents are not organized, therefore are much less powerful than either unions or politicians. So no wonder that they don't have much of a voice in the educational system as politicians and unions do.
And you described that Milei and the reformers in Argentina now want to open up this educational system to more competition, to private initiative, etc. Do you see this as a sustainable and key factor in making these reforms succeed?
Well, most probably the future of Milei, it's in the hands of in other areas like the economic policies. If he's successful killing inflation and having the economy growing up again, that's what people will value that more than, okay, I don't worry about the other. Just give me this first, and then we'll see. So I think that his fate is in the balance on that regard, on how successful he is in the...
I don't want to monopolize the discussion,
No,
but do you have hope? Because, I mean, it seems when I listen to you that this system has been deeply entrenched by corruption and lobby interests.
Yeah,
so is there a chance that he can break this?
Yeah. I do have hope, not because I can't forecast the future. I'm not good at that. But I see the polls. And the polls, it really surprised me. Because after all these 4 or 5 months of very heavy impact in the economy, polls are still favoring him. So I wonder, how can that be? I mean, people are watching prices go up first, all the utility rates going up, and taxes even. So how come that they keep on doing that? And it looks like polls are saying, well, because we're bad, but we have hope. In the past, we were bad, we were going worse. No hope for us. At least they still have some hope. How long will this last? I don't know. Will they last enough to get the results? Well, the test will be the congressional elections, let's say October next year. So he has a year and so to find out.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's discuss liberal hopes. Who wants to have the microphone first? Please, the gentleman there.
Thank you. You've described how you are improving things in the educational system a little bit, given all these struggles and these forces that are against you. Are you dedicated to the real aim of getting the state out of education? So not just try some reforms, get a little more quality control, a little more room for parents here and there, but will you get the real aim of creating liberty and open up culture and development of people where they can really choose what's best for their children and get the government out of prescribing what our children learn at school and all these illusions about they care about the quality of schooling? Will you get the real aim?
Yes. Well, as I said, the reforms in education are considered part of a third generation of reforms. In the meantime, there is a move to start moving into more competition and more choice. That raises a debate, by the way, which I think is interesting. Are vouchers the way to a more free education? Because once you have vouchers, you probably will have people willing more vouchers or more government money into vouchers. Yes, that's a risk, and I'm willing to accept the discussion and the debate. I think that personally, Millet thinks that vouchers is a way to that world where, when would that world come about? Well, probably when people is wealthy enough to pay their own education, I think, probably. They are thinking, let's do that, let's have a booming economy, and in the future, this probably will not be an issue. In the meantime, at least what I was trying to micromanage, let's say, is to find holes in the legislation that would allow opening up the market without the need of a whole bill that is not going to Congress. So what about, let me give you an example. I found that there is a law that was approved in 1883, and no one knows that the law is there, and no one abolished the law. But it turns out that at that time, a kind of a liberal conservative president set what is called the free exam. So that meant that all people could go to a public school at the end of the year and give a free exam and then get the degree, second-year degree or third-year degree, whatever. So I said, oh, wait a second. If this law is still alive, why don't we call for free exams at public and private schools so anyone can teach, anyone can send their children anywhere, and then at the end of the year you go and give exam, and that's it. I said, and that probably will not require much legislative reform. Well, that's the one idea, the kind of idea, how do you find loopholes to move when it's difficult? I understand that even if we try that, we are going to get help from the union. Oh, it's going to be easy anyway. But that thing before, I think what Millet, and that I agree with him, has in mind is we have to win the cultural battle, and then we have to move all the reforms once the people actually want them and believe on them.
From theory to politics,
Yeah.
it's sometimes a long way, even though it's good to have philosophers first. But you mentioned yourself that you would like to have sort of general exams and then evaluations of teacher. How would you then define the content of these exams and the evaluations?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's awful. Yes. I understand that, sure. Yes. Again...
Is there a risk that the unions will define that?
No, that shouldn't be, of course. And that definitely is a problem. I certainly believe education should be free, and you would be certified wherever you want. And the quality of the certification will be the reputation of the one giving the certificate. That's where I want to go. Now, if we could go now, I'll do it now. Yes, go. Forget about all exams at the end of the year, whatever. You go and find someone who certifies you, and that's it. But again,
you wouldn't bother about fake certificates or things like this.
Well, because I think there would be a market for certificates, and there would also be a market to evaluate the certificates. You know, kind of a quality ranking of this or that. Because, you know, names give you a lot. If I say I have a degree at Harvard, do I have to say much more? Or Stanford? Do I have to say much more? No. If I tell you I have a degree from a small town, Calamuchita in La Rioja in Argentina, what? What is that? Who knows that? Well, those people will have to make a lot of effort to send information to the others saying, oh, listen, we are good. Most probably what they would say is, okay, we are Calamuchita, but we are overseen by Harvard. Okay, now you believe, now you trust us. Yeah, okay, I trust. I think that's the way a market for quality in education would probably develop.
I think that is really a key issue for all of us here. I mean, we have convincing ideas, liberal ideas, how things should work, but the problem is how to convince people that we are right. And obviously, it looks like that if the situation is as bad as in Argentina, you get the window of opportunity, and hopefully this will become a positive example.
Yeah, it is also a burden, because the fate of these ideas is much at stake here. If he succeeds, well, okay, come on. But if he fails, oh no, I think we'll have to wait for another 100 years for a new chance to do that. You know, so it's a risky bet, which we at least, not you, but we at least were willing to take, because we were in such a bad and desperate situation. But it's a risky bet.
And we are talking here about hope, liberal hopes. Any other question here in the
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Krause. I have a question concerning the support for Millet in Argentina. How is the support among the young generation? So those people who have most recently went through school and university, I've heard that they overproportionately support him.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah.
And if so, that would be something that could be a cause for optimism.
Yes, thank you. That certainly has been a change. Youngsters were left-wingers at the beginning of this century, let's say, and they thought that they were on the left and claiming for, well, left-wing issues, and now the youngsters are libertarians. And this is amazing. And this is basically Millet's personal achievement. He turned the young from being left-wingers to be libertarians. And we say, come on. Let me tell you, I'm just retired because we have an age limit, but I had a chair at the University of Buenos Aires. And at that chair, and at the University of Buenos Aires, I taught a course on the history of economic thought, and I managed to have an elective course on Austrian economics at the government school. It's still there. It's still alive. Now there is another fellow doing it. Well, let's say that 10 or 12 years ago, at that elective course, I would have 12 students. 12, next year, 14. Now we have 100. And they are all coming. They want to learn. They basically, we are getting the Millet impact. Oh, I heard that. And he's talking about Austrian economics. What is Austrian economics? Okay, let's come here. And they are coming to the course. I say 100 of them every semester. So that has been a change. At least that's what I can see. You know.
I think that is really a mission for all of us, convince people that there is a positive message, not in leftist thought, but in liberal ideas, libertarian ideas maybe. And I think on this very positive note to end this morning, Martin Krause has deserved a big applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.